Hi and welcome to a new video on my channel. In this tutorial I want to show you how to make 6 different types of ribbing that you can attach to the edges of your projects, or which you can work in the project itself when you begin. There are 6 plus a variation here that I will show you, and you can use the timestamps in the description to jump from one to the other. They are all worked with chunky yarn and an 8mm Tunisian crochet hook, and these are for demonstration purposes only, but there is also a blog post where you can see the stitch patterns in detail for each of these. So if you want to make a project with ribbing and don't know exactly which type of ribbing to choose, you can keep watching and find out how the different types of ribbing work and how they are made. For this tutorial I will show you first an example of ribbing and then how to make it using Tunisian crochet stitches. I will make different swatches one after the other on the same fabric so we can compare how tightly the ribbing pulls the fabric, and I will make 6 stitches in the ribbing pattern and 3 simple stitches before the last stitch. And for each different pattern I will use a different color so that you can easily see the difference between them. So the first example we have here is 1 row of Tunisian purl stitches, 1 row of simple stitches. The row of purl stitches modifies the one below it. So this was initially the row of simple stitches and this one is the row of purl stitches. To do this you need to know how to make purl stitches and simple stitches, for which I have separate videos. We begin with a foundation and we also have a video for that on this channel, so you can check it out. Since the foundation is made with simple stitches, I will start with purl stitches in the second row. That's 6 purl stitches and then 3 simple stitches. Last stitch, chain 1, yarn over, pull through 2 to the beginning of the row to return. And the next row is just simple stitches. By the way, if you want to make this hat, there is a tutorial for it here on the channel. So we have 9 simple stitches on the third row. Last stitch, chain 1, yarn over, pull through 2 to the beginning of the row to return. Again, purl stitches, and 3 simple stitches before the last stitch. Chain 1, yarn over, pull through 2 to the beginning of the row to return. If you repeat these rows a few more times, you will see the pattern emerging. The fabric has this 3D shape now on the part with the ribbing, and it's also flat on the part without the ribbing. It has a slight decrease in length. As you can see, the part with the simple stitches is a bit wider than the part with the ribbing. So this is a good type of ribbing if you need something that does not curl and if you like working with short rows on the side of a project. Normally you work a fabric like this and then you attach the ribbing in the other direction. As you saw in the hat example, the ribbing is worked like this, and it works to keep the fabric from rolling. The next example is a type of ribbing that is worked in a different direction. So you work it in parallel with the fabric. You also have alternating Tunisian simple stitches and purl stitches, but this time you alternate them vertically instead of one row one stitch and the other row the other stitch. So I will continue my swatch using the blue yarn, and this time the ribbing will be perpendicular to my current swatch. I will make first one row of simple stitches to equalize everything. And we can pretend that this is the foundation row for the rib. Now, as I told you before, the Tunisian stitches modify what's below them. So in this case, for the second row, we will modify this stitch here. We put a purl stitch and then one simple stitch, one purl stitch, and one simple stitch. Last stitch and then yarn over pull through 2 to return. We continue like this with one purl stitch, one simple stitch without changing the order, because if we change the order then we will get the honeycomb stitch, which is also a great non-curling stitch, but it doesn't look like ribbing. I will make one more row. And now you can see the ribbing. It's not very obvious, and also when you look at it from the side, there isn't much of a change in the height of the fabric, not like in the case of this kind of ribbing where you can see these small hills here. So this is mostly a decorative type of ribbing. It doesn't have any elasticity to it, and it's not very visible either. I used this type of ribbing on the sport print sweater pattern, which is now available to use from my blog. Another type of ribbing that is related is a ribbing made of alternating Tunisian purl stitches and Tunisian knit stitches. This one looks more like the classic knit ribbing, but as you can see in my sample, it doesn't like to stay flat, so it has a slight curl because of the knit stitches. So if you know you have yarn that can be easily blocked, you can use this and it looks nice. But if your yarn doesn't like to be blocked, then maybe don't use this one, use another type of ribbing. I will switch to a red yarn to make this. And I will continue from the existing pattern, because all I have to change is that instead of making simple stitches, I will make Tunisian knit stitches. So the first one is a purl stitch, and the next one is a knit stitch. Purl and knit. In knitting, this kind of ribbing is much tighter and has a lot of elasticity to it. Because in knitting, the opposite of the knit stitch is the purl stitch. But in Tunisian crochet, the opposite of the knit stitch is not the purl stitch. And the opposite of the Tunisian purl stitch is not the Tunisian knit stitch. So we reached the end of the row. We chain 1 and then yarn over, pull through 2 to the beginning of the row to return. And you can see that there's a slight difference in weight between these two yarns, but you can still use the same hook size. Let's make a few more rows and then we will compare the way these two types of ribbing look. After a few rows, you can really see the ribbing starting to look like it's supposed to. And one thing I've just noticed is that if you use a larger hook than even the one recommended to make good stitches in your yarn, then you will probably get a type of ribbing that works better. So it has more space to close in and be more functional than if you were to use the recommended hook size for the yarn for Tunisian crochet. And in the case of these two yarns, which are slightly thicker than the red one, I didn't have enough space, so there isn't as much room for the stitches to get closer to each other. In knitting, if you want a tighter rib, you usually go down a needle size. But in Tunisian crochet, you have to go up a hook size to allow the stitches space to scrunch up. A variation of this is the 2x2 rib. Maybe you can see it better in this one, where you have 2 knit stitches and 2 purl stitches. And as you can see, it's not a very elastic rib. It doesn't have any give in non-elastic yarns, but in elastic yarns such as this one, which is a sock yarn, there is a little bit of give. For this swatch, I will use this green yarn, which has the same composition as the red yarn and the same thickness. And I will make first a row of simple stitches so we have a good foundation. And we can assume this is the foundation of a new project, which looks like a row of simple stitches. For this stitch pattern, we have alternating pairs of Tunisian purl stitches and Tunisian knit stitches. So I will begin with 2 purl stitches, then continue with 2 knit stitches, and then 2 purl stitches, 2 knit stitches, and 1 purl stitch because I'm out of space for the next pattern repeat. Then the last stitch, and then chain 1, yarn over, pull through 2 to the beginning of the row to return. We continue like this in pattern with 2 purl stitches, 2 knit stitches, When the ribbing is finished, the knit stitches stand out a bit more when there are more of them, but what I have noticed with Tunisian crochet is that these 2 loops, when doing Tunisian knit stitches, they tend to stick out more than the actual loops from 1 stitch. So maybe an option would be to make 3 knit stitches and 1 Tunisian purl stitch, and maybe that would look like a 2x2 knit ribbing, because these loops on the edge kind of disappear from the pattern. And as you can see, the Tunisian pearl stitches are very wide. So I will try that now. I've never made a project with it, but let's see. So 1 pearl stitch and 3 knit stitches. 1 pearl stitch, 3 knit stitches, and 1 pearl stitch. Now if we look at just the top part, ignoring what's on the bottom, it looks more like a 2x2 rib, even though there are 3 knit stitches in there and only 1 pearl stitch. That's because when you look at the fabric, these 2 stitches here that look like upside down knit stitches are what come to the front. Sometimes this one as well, but mostly the ones in the middle like this. So if you want to use knit stitches for ribbing, maybe try this combination of 3 knit stitches and 1 pearl stitch and you will get a nice rib, but again it tends to curl, so make sure you can block the fabric that you make with this rib. The last type of ribbing I want to show you is also worked sideways, so you can make it in short rows on the edge of the fabric, and this one is worked with reverse pearl stitches, which I showed you in the video about reverse stitches. You can make 1 row of reverse stitches and 1 row of simple stitch, and on the back it will look the same, almost the same, or you can make 2 rows of each. I like this version more with 2 rows, but I will show you both. I will use this orange yarn for the last type of ribbing. Just like in the first section, I will make 6 stitches in the rib pattern and then 3 Tunisian simple stitches, so we can see how much the ribbing pulls in the fabric on the side. So the first row is a row of simple stitches, so we can say we have a foundation. And on the next row we start the ribbing. I will show you first how to make the 1 by 1 ribbing. So we make reverse pearl stitches, and please check out the video for reverse pearl stitches if you don't know how to make them. I show you in extreme detail how to do that in the video tutorial for reverse stitches. That's 6 and 3 simple stitches. And on the next row we just make simple stitches. I will continue to repeat these 2 rows until I run out of orange. Now I run out of orange, so I'm not going to continue. But as you can see, you have what looks like 2 rows of purl stitches and 2 rows on purl stitches on the other side as well. And in between them is 1 row of what looks like simple stitches. You can already see, even from this small sample, that there is a significant reduction in the height of this sample, so it means that this rib does actually work. If you make it even longer, so more than 6 stitches, and probably with a bigger hook, you will have a tighter rib here. And now for the last type of ribbing, I will use a different yarn because I ran out of range. The last type will have 2 rows of simple stitches and 2 rows of reverse purl stitches. And we begin with the simple stitches. And now we have 2 rows of reverse purl stitches, but only for the 6 stitches that make up the rib, and the rest will be simple stitches. When you work purl stitches, always make sure you tension back the loop, otherwise you will have loose stitches, which is something I discuss in the tutorial for purl stitches as well, and it's important to remember that for any kind of purl stitch. And now the second row. And now we repeat these 4 rows. I will do this off camera and I will make a longer piece so that I can show you the difference. Now that the ribbing is done, you can see that it really works to pull in the fabric from the simple stitches. It works better than just 1 by 1 ribbing because there is more space for the back to open up and the front as well. So if you want functional ribbing on the bottom of a sweater, for example, in Tunisian crochet, you can use this technique and add it by making short rows on the bottom of your sweater. You can also use 1 by 1 or 1 by 2 rib like this, using the reverse purl stitch. The other types of ribbing are mostly aesthetic, so not very functional, and this one is a bit functional and mostly aesthetic because it creates these ridges. So I hope you learned something from this tutorial and that you will use these types of ribbing in your chosen project. I will put links to the different patterns for the things I showed you in this video if those patterns exist, and you can check them out if you want to use that kind of ribbing on a project. If you want to use this resource again, you can pin it or save it in a playlist of your own, so you can return to this when you need to make some kind of ribbing on a project made in Tunisian crochet. If you want me to, I can also make a video about types of ribbing in regular crochet, where again you can work vertically or horizontally to make decorative or functional ribbing. Let me know in the comments if you're interested in that, and also let me know which one of these is your favorite based on what I've showed you in this video. If you want to know when I publish patterns that use any of these kinds of ribbing, make sure to subscribe to my emails, as I always let you know on there if I publish anything. I thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon. Bye!